You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Happy Friday. Duane Rollins here in Toronto. Kevin Laramee joins me, as always, in Montreal. We'll say hi to Kevin in a minute. We say hi to Kevin every day, but we have another guest on the line right now. Joining us from, I believe, in London is Bea Redondo. How you doing, Bea?
Hi, not bad. How are you?
Good. Bea is a writer for Unusual Offers, the site that most people are familiar with by now, that's run by women to talk about the beautiful game. So we thought we'd have her on to have a little chat about the Champions League, and in particular, the club that she follows most closely in that, Atletico Madrid, which is a team that doesn't necessarily get the amount of attention it necessarily deserves, in my opinion anyway, based on the success that they've had in the past few years. So Bea, let's just start with, I guess, the most newsworthy aspect of that club, and that is the draw, which has come out. And Leicester, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're very right. I think, I'm based in London, and getting some of the reactions from the Leicester fans, I think we're not appreciated as a very strong side. No, I think I'm very happy. I'm really, really happy. If you had asked me yesterday who I didn't want to get, that would have been Real Madrid, definitely. Very difficult history there, but I think anyone would have wanted Leicester. I think it's no secret to anyone that they're probably, I don't like to say the weakest side, but yeah, I mean, maybe probably the biggest surprise, let's say it that way. And I think we've had complicated years in Champions League with Bayern Munich, Barcelona. I think having Leicester now is very good news.
No, for sure. A quick anecdote, and I think I've told this on air before, but I did spend some time in Spain, in around Madrid, and I was blown away by the amount of support that Atleti has there. Can you just sort of articulate that a little bit more as someone who follows that team? Where does that team fit within the Spanish psyche, within the sort of overall scene down there? So for people that don't follow Spanish football that closely.
I would say what's particularly different about Atletico Madrid, they've historically they've been a very strong side. They went through some bad years. They even did an amazing spot with a little kid asking his dad, "Dad, why are we Atletico Madrid supporters?" Because it went through a phase of, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, in which it was not easy to be an Atletico Madrid supporter. But what they have is that Atletico de Madrid as probably, it goes in families, like families will support Atletico de Madrid and it will be part of the tradition, whereas with Real Madrid and Barcelona, you'll probably have people, from all over the world. With Atletico de Madrid, it's a very, very cultural thing. It's the second biggest team in Madrid. I would argue the biggest, but I'm probably biased there. Second biggest team in Madrid, and the rivalry with Real Madrid is massive. I think you hear about Real Madrid much more internationally, but Atletico de Madrid has a big fan base. It's comparable. I would say it's comparable to Real Madrid within the city itself. Probably not in other cities around Spain. They obviously, Real Madrid has many more followers, many more supporters. But in that sense, I would say within the city, the support is massive. The rivalry is massive, and it's very emotional. I was talking to a friend who's actually a season ticket holder about the fact that probably Atletico de Madrid has the most emotional and passionate supporters anywhere, because it's not about having the best team, but it's something that cannot be explained. Why you support Atletico de Madrid? It's just it has no explanation, but you just grow with that in your family, and then it sticks. And there are points in which you would happily move to another team if you could, but you cannot.
Fair enough, man. Quick disclosure, I wouldn't say I don't really have a team in Spain, but I do have a soft spot for Atleti simply because of the time I spent there, and I was blown away by what you just said. How even though there was this mammoth club that was right there, that there were just so many Atleti fans all over the area around Madrid. Would you, just to give it a comparison that many people might be a little bit more familiar with, would you maybe be similar to the Manchester City, Manchester United kind of dynamic, in which in Manchester it's a split, but outside of that it's much bigger for United?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I think the other element that plays in Atletic's favor is, well, obviously the rivalry between Barcelona and Real Madrid has always translated into some kind of affection towards Atletico de Madrid from Barcelona supporters, and the other way around, I have to admit. But also the element of, being the underdog. I think that is also something that makes people that are maybe, less inclined to support one or the other to be, to like Atletico de Madrid a bit better, just because, you're so used to Real Madrid, and they have, they have this work ethics, and they don't have the budget, but they just put in the effort, and they are such a solid team with no stars that, well, you obviously have the stars, but it's not like in other big teams in which you have those names. It's a massive team effort. And I think that's the other thing that makes people so, excited about seeing them play.
When you're looking at Atleti Madrid as well, it's the team of the people, the more blue collar, literally at some instances, some seasons, but the more blue collar mentality, the team of the people, the team that you don't feel like, you feel like they're friends, your friends. And a lot of players from the team come back after their trials with a bigger team, in some cases in England, and like the likes of Fernando Torres, and then they come back to Spain and they come back to their first love, which is Atleti. How important in the players themselves is the belonging sentiment?
Well, I think you've mentioned, obviously, the best example in Fernando Torres. I can still remember the press conference when he was leaving the club. He was in tears. And then when he came back, he is arguably the most iconic player for the team, even though he's not having the best season. We all know that he doesn't get as many minutes as some other forwards, Gameiro and Griezmann are there, but he's just, he's getting out there. He gets this excitement, and El Calderon, everyone in El Calderon, whenever he's just, stretching, warming up in the cycling, gets so excited. The other day during the Champions League match, he was warming up for 45 minutes, the whole of the El Calderon, shouting to Cholo, bring him in. They didn't eventually. I'm not sure if it's because of the injury or why, but definitely it has something, that relationship between the club and the players and the supporters. It has something, and it pulls players like Felipe Luis, Thiago, to come back, to want to succeed with the club again, because they find that, I don't know if it's supporters, if it's a combination between supporters and Cholo Simeone, but there's something there that makes it, as I said, so emotional. So the passion towards the club is something you don't get in bigger teams. And the commitment too.
Yeah, no, obviously the commitment. When you're looking at on the pitch now, Bea, over the last few years, it's probably the pinnacle of the history of Atleti, rivaling their city brethren of Real Madrid in the finals of the Champions League. Yeah, they lost, but they got there, had a great runs in the Liga, and they're now talked about not the top two, but the top three, with Atleti being involved in the conversation in Barcelona and Real Madrid. With players like Griezmann and others, like you mentioned, Gameiro, is it the time where Atleti becomes a top club in the world?
So I think that is a very good question, and if you have a look at how many times they've been in the quarterfinals of the Champions League in recent years, 4 times in a row, it definitely looks like that. But again, I don't know. I think the feeling within the country is that it should be up there. But again, reading the reactions to the draw this morning and reading the reactions from the Leicester supporters, they seem to be quite happy to be getting Atletico de Madrid, because, well, some of them, others wanted the big teams. So again, they weren't happy because Atletico wasn't big enough, or they were happy because it wasn't big enough. I think it is a time to take Atletico de Madrid seriously, but I think the way Atletico de Madrid plays, they don't score 6 goals against PSG. So they're obviously, their images of their goals don't go around the world. They don't make headlines. They have a different way of playing. They are solid in defense, and they don't concede goals, and just 1 goal is enough for them. And that is something that I think is potentially stopping them from becoming one of the big teams, in the sense that sometimes it's not just about how you perform, but also how the media receives your performance and how they promote it too.
Of course, there's one of the big news coming out from Athletic moving forward is the new stadium opening up. Just tell us what your thoughts are on that as someone who supports this club and leaving the Calderon after this season.
It's been the new stadium has been in the works for so many years. It's always felt like it was going to happen this year. It's not happening. It was going to happen this year. It's not happening. Now it finally looks like it's happening this year. And I happen to have family just around the corner from the new stadium. It's an amazing place. It's massive. I think it loses part of its value because Atletico de Madrid plays right now. Calderon is based like in the center of the city. It's just next to the river. It's a very iconic place. They're taking it to the outskirts of Madrid. I think it might be easier to get there by car, but it's definitely outside of the city. It doesn't have that sort of city feeling. So I don't know emotionally what that can do, being a bit outside from the city, but I think it's a step forward in terms of, getting a bigger stadium that can hold many more people, the whole new dynamic that's going to bring to the team. And there's been a lot of talks whether Cholo Simeone is leaving or going. He said a number of times, we never know who to believe, but he said a number of times that he wants to lead that transition because it's seen as something more than a stadium. It's seen like a transition in terms of philosophy, in terms of the whole overall club.
Bea, when you're looking at Atleti in the Champions League, they're going to face Leicester City. We've talked about how maybe some Leicester fans didn't respect Atleti, but if you're Atleti, are you looking at this tie, at this quarterfinal of the Champions League, to make a statement saying, you know what, we can put 2-3 goals and win very easily, or not easily, very, at least in a very positive and very impressive fashion against a lesser team in the quarterfinals?
I don't think it's going to be an easy match. I don't think they're going to score that many goals. I'm always prepared to be surprised, but I have a feeling it might make a bigger impact if you win against Bayern Munich. It seems like we've recently met with Bayern Munich on a couple of occasions in the last few years, and we mostly, except for the final match in which we lost 1-0, we've mostly been quite fortunate. And I think those kind of matches probably make like a bigger statement. I don't think I think Atletico de Madrid's been in the final for so many years. At this point, only winning the Champions League is going to make that big statement. We've done it already, so it's not going to be surprising to be there again, at least not that surprising. So I think the only thing that Atletico need to do is go out and win it, and this is a perfect season to do it because they cannot compete in the league anymore. Well, they can, but it's not going to get them anywhere. So, yeah.
May I have your attention, please?
Oh,
may I have your attention, please?
Everything okay there?
Yeah, sorry. Excuse me.
All right, live radio. It's it's good for. I want to talk a little bit about, and I apologize. I want to talk about Real Madrid just briefly. Would you want to face them for a third time in a final? Obviously, you're in a final, but would the potential heartbreak of going 0-3 in that type of game be too much to bear, or would you embrace that again?
I personally wouldn't. I know there are many people that actually do want to face Real Madrid, because it's like, if you win them, at least, after all this time, you've managed to overcome all this 2 years. We also lost against them in the league at home this season. So it would be obviously it would be amazing to beat them at the Champions League final. I wouldn't want to face them at the Champions League final, because I'm not that sure we would win. I think the psychological effect that Real Madrid is having on us right now, I wouldn't want to go through that as a fan. If I wasn't an Atletico Madrid supporter, of course I would, because it would be such an amazing match. But no, not as a fan.
Fair enough. And just looking at the overall draw to conclude this, Bea, again, and we thank you for your time, and we'll give you an opportunity to promote anything you want when we're done this one. But just looking at the overall draw, what jumps out at you outside of your own tie? What other ties are you excited to watch?
I'm really excited to watch the Real Madrid Bayern Munich and the Barcelona Juventus. I think they're going to be amazing matches, especially that Real Madrid Bayern Munich. Ancelotti against Zidane. I think it's going to be a very, very good match. I haven't been able to watch Borussia or Monaco, so I don't know what to expect from that one, because they've always had their matches when one of my other teams were having the matches. But I also think Barcelona, after scoring those 6 goals against PSG, against Juventus, which is the team that has conceded less goals throughout this the tournament so far, I think that's also going to be a very interesting clash. I don't know. I think they're very, very good matches there. Spanish media is talking a lot about, the possibilities of some of the Spanish teams, meeting each other at the quarterfinals, and that hasn't happened, which is, I think, very good news, because it will allow me to watch 3 very good matches, and then hopefully have one of those 3 teams over to the next round. But we'll see. I think they're going to be very promising matches. Definitely, if I was a supporter, not an Atletico Madrid supporter, I would go for the Bayern Munich Real Madrid.
All right, fair enough. I personally think that Leicester got their nightmare matchup in this matchup. So I'll tell you that, because that's a club that's not going to lie down and take Leicester City for granted. They're just going to grind them. So I think you're going through the semifinals, but I don't have the same sort of trepidation that a hardcore fan might be. So I do thank you for your time today. Tell us a little bit about why your involvement with Unusual Efforts. Maybe for those that aren't familiar with the site, could you just tell us a little bit about it as well?
So Unusual Efforts is a great site. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's got amazing articles by female writers. It's a site in which they give us an opportunity to find a place in which to write about football, which isn't that common, I would say, in the general media. And for me, what I particularly love about Unusual Efforts is that it gives you a possibility to explore something other than, matches, the news, something a bit more in depth. You get, articles on different players, but also on the situation of football in different countries. I think that's what I like the most. But there's so many, different type of writers, so much content that I think there's something for everyone.
Fair enough. Involves my good friend Sonia Mizio, which is how we met to have this interview today. I do thank you for your time, Bea, and hopefully we'll talk soon down the line.
Hopefully we will, because that will probably mean Atletico Madrid is there in the final, and that will be amazing.
All right, enjoy your day.
Bye, guys. Thank you very much.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And we're back. Kevin,
Yeah,
I swear to God, I did not know what accent you would have when I booked her on St. Patrick's Day.
I know, right? Well, it was quite refreshing to have Bea on the show, and I have to say, for a second there, I was kind of afraid that the Martians were coming, but no, the Martians did not come, and we had some great content there. And looking at the matchup, Dwayne, for the Champions League, you know what really gets my attention? The one matchup we didn't really talk about with Bea, Dortmund, Monaco. Wow, it's very interesting. Those two teams, one of those two teams, which are very similar in their way of playing, in their recent history, not the money part of Monaco, but what I'm saying is their success level, their level as a roster is very similar. So at least one of those two gets a chance to go to the semis.
Precise look, and I am not someone. We all know what my affiliation is, and we all understand that my Wednesday wasn't the best day. But I'm not someone that holds a grudge that way. I almost would rather have the team that beats the team that you support to go on, but that makes me a bit unique. But no, that should be a very exciting matchup. The way Monaco played, and they are in such good form. And I said this in the head lead into the game to any City fans that I had, is that thing wasn't in the bag, and I was, wasn't just me putting service out there, right? It was. You look at their home form, Monaco's that is. They have an outrageous goal differential at home. They get forward. They play a similar style to Leicester. If you're more familiar with them,
more skills, better. But more, with more skills.
Yeah. So, and you look at how Dortmund likes to play traditionally, and I think that should be a very offensive matchup. And it's good to have one of those teams in there. Now, as I said to Bea, I truly do think Leicester got its nightmare draw, because again, you get in there with the Real Madrid, you get in there with the Barcelona. What Leicester could have done, even though that seems absurd, to say that Atletico Madrid was a worse draw for them than those big historical teams. But I think that they would have just packed back and they would have sat down there with their normal 20% possession, and they just would have did what they do, and probably they lose, probably because they are overmatched at this particular point of the competition. But I think they have a better chance to pull that upset in the way that they pull upsets, but they're drawn against a team that is going to give them not a second, that is going to defend for their lives, and is not going to allow Jamie Vardy to get in behind and get under their nerves and everything like that, because they're as annoying as Leicester. So they are absolutely.
No, I agree with you, Duane. And the press, the pressure, but it's kind of like that panic feeling that a team like Atleti makes you feel. It's like they're on you as soon as you get the ball, and even if you don't have it, they're on you. They create that turnover, and then they have players like Gamero and Griezmann that can finish anywhere close to 25 yards. And that becomes a very big problem, because once they have their one goal, well, guess what? If you have one chance, you better bury it, because one is probably all you're going to get all game long.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, from a pure fan perspective, now that I don't have a horse in the race, I will be supporting Atleti the rest of the way through this. So maybe I'm a little biased there when I say these things, but nonetheless, I have had this in my mind that third time's a charm situation. If they avoid each other in the draw, I do think that we might be destined for another All Madrid final. Although that said, I think another club that we might be underestimating in this competition is Juve. We haven't talked a lot about them. They've kind of quietly gone under the radar in most of the competition, and here they are in another quarterfinal. They've got a tough draw, but then again, I think Barca is beatable this particular year. All right, let's move to from one historical world derby in the Madrid derby to one that maybe doesn't quite have the same cachet just yet. And I don't even know if it has a name, and there will be people out there that would argue that you can't have a derby when they're 5,000 kilometers apart. However, TFC plays Vancouver this weekend in the Canadian Derby, in the West Wants In Derby,
in the Air Canada Flight AC 800 Derby.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, it is. That's the start right there. Is Vancouver it's a rivalry game for sure, but Derby kind of takes a loose sort of meaning nowadays. So I don't know. I think it is, because it is a game in which people will get up for it more. And you know what makes me, Kevin, believe that this is a big rivalry game and a derby game is the fact that the Whitecaps fans so violently protest that TFC is their rival. That tells me all I need to know. if you are trying to, what's the old Shakespeare? He doth protest too much or something, whatever. I
I don't
wasn't
know,
much of an
but
English major.
but in gist of it, it makes it usually if they hate Toronto so much they don't even want to be a part of a rivalry. Like, no, we don't tell us who our rival is. No, we like Portland, we like Seattle. Those are our rivals. No. Toronto was there first. Well, I don't know if there was there first, but in emotion-packed moments over the last few years, go back to the Canadian Championship or before that, where the 6-1s, all those things, when you include the Montreal Impact in that triumvirate, maybe. But that rivalry, Toronto-Vancouver, does exist. If you're looking at the players on both sides, the history, the coach, there is something brewing there.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've had this conversation. We talk about the Impact TFC, which I maintain is, in terms of world football, the closest MLS has to an actual political-based rivalry out there. Because, not to belabor this in a Vancouver discussion, but the fact that I'm belaboring this at all in a Vancouver discussion tells you all you need to know about where Vancouver sits in this thing and why they would consider them rivals, is because we're sitting here two Central Canadians talking about Central Canadian stuff. However, you get into the French and English and blah, blah, blah. It speaks for itself. But to speak back to Vancouver, that sort of isolation, that historical sort of grievance about being ignored, about being the forgotten one, is what drives them. And then from the Toronto perspective, Toronto being the largest center in the country and being the economic driver of a lot of the country, does tend to just be the big boy in these things. And this is not meant to offend, but it probably is. And that sort of just where our rivalry comes back is this constant. It's like when you're on the street and there's this tiny little dog that's yipping at it, and eventually you just want to hit the dog. You don't hit the dog because you shouldn't hit dogs, but nonetheless, that's kind of why the TFC fans look at the Whitecaps as a rival. But
so to use the non-animal threatening analogy, if your neighbor is really loud and he keeps yelling on his front porch, one of these days when you pass in front, you're gonna yell back.
Yeah, you go, shut up already.
Dude, are you done?
I'm sorry, my house is bigger.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't know you could hear that loud. Dude, shut up.
So yes, there is definitely some edge to this competition. Kevin,
so who's Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino in that equation? Is it Vancouver or is it Toronto?
Well, who's to say? It's the old man yelling at the world. That would be well, I guess the older of the cities is Toronto, but we're the established for sure, and they are the city that feels underappreciated, and that is ultimately what always leads to a good rivalry. And the fans, there's a lot of within all of the three Canadian cities, there's a lot of, and I think any American listeners to this don't necessarily understand this, even though the distances are pretty significant. Montreal and Toronto's fairly close, but it's not like I can just go out my door and decide this morning that I'm going to Montreal for the day. It's not like that. I have to plan that, right?
Yeah, you have to bring water. So you have to plan.
Yeah, we're talking about a 5-hour drive here. Nonetheless, there's a familiarity between the fan base because it's ultimately a small soccer community. So we all known each other for years in many cases, right? So sometimes when there's a small but big enough base of people that have known each other and run in the same circles for years, there can be natural friendships and rivalries that do evolve in there. And we get along with a lot of us in Canadian national team games. We've certainly gotten along, but there's that familiarity breeds contempt sort of situation that plays into this as well. I don't think that this one, when you look at the overall league, that there would be very many people outside of Canada that would be looking at this game and really thinking of it in the same sense as you'd think of a Portland, Seattle, or a Montreal, Toronto, or a New York, or whatever. But there are elements, and there is a history to this one that goes way back to pre-MLS that does, I think, lead to it being a much bigger rivalry game than a lot of people south of the border understand or appreciate. So I am looking forward to this one. It's going to be a bit different this week, though, Kevin, because I think that, when it comes to this season, both teams have sort of different things going on in their head right now. So I don't know necessarily whether this is going to have the same pop as it usually does. The Whitecaps coming off that loss in Mexico and probably looking ahead a bit to the second leg of that, wondering about that. They're going to be a bit beat up for it, too. TFC, the 2 draws off the start of the season. The narrative here in this city is that it's a quote-unquote slow start, even though they're two road draws, which tells you a lot about where TFC sees itself right now. So beyond the game, they're going to be looking to just get their season rolling, right?
Yeah, but you know what? I just have a good analogy, and it's very similar. Toronto Vancouver rivalry is almost equivalent and very similar to a New York LA type of rivalry in some sports and in MLS, where it's not a direct rivalry, but it's two big cities. It's we're sharing the same country. We're both wanting more. We both think we're the center of it all, but in reality, there's always like an elephant in the room. So it's that kind of rivalry.
Yeah, precisely. Exactly. That's out there, listeners. If you have any suggestions on what this thing should be called, because Canadian Derby doesn't do it justice, and Montreal's in that as well. So I don't like the name Canadian Derby. It's too generic. We need a better, more.
There's no
more
road that goes directly
telling,
from
more.
Toronto to Vancouver, so we
Yeah.
can't say like it's the 401 Derby, quote unquote. It's the I don't know. It's the rest of Canada Derby, the Battle of the Rock, the Rock Battle.
I know it's a tricky one because the distance is so great, but we'll look at that. I do like my Ottawa Edmonton, the Hug It Out Derby, because they get along. Or sorry, Ottawa Edmonton, the Hug It Out Derby. I like that one. I'm trying to get that one to catch on this year, but it's because they all love each other so much. But at any rate, quickly, Kevin, we'll go a little bit over in the Liga. I did have on the lineup to have our favorite memories of Vancouver, Toronto games. Do you have anything that jumps out that you remember from past Whitecaps TFC games?
For years and years, Vancouver were trying to win the Voyageurs Cup and failing every single time they got close. And at some very famous instant, they were mad at Montreal, but it happened in Toronto, and in a Toronto game where Toronto needed to score 6 goals, and they did, and they finally won. And the Vancouver fans never went away from it. They're always like blaming Toronto. Oh, for years you took the trophy that we should have won. And you mentioned that Will Johnson goal to me earlier today as well, where Will Johnson broke his leg but scored a goal that secured Toronto that Voyageurs Cup. There's a lot of different moments that you probably can tell, but it's like a more feeling than a moment. Feeling of the Southsiders and Vancouver supporters being angry at getting their chance of lifting a trophy taken away from them.
Yeah, the 6-1 game. This is Spain-focused show. I actually didn't. Here's my dirty little secret. I didn't watch the Miracle of Montreal live. I was flying to Spain. So when I landed in Spain, and it was like, it's a whole whirlwind because we connected through. It was Barcelona I was going to, actually. So actually, you're a cyclist. What's the city just north
Valencia?
east of yeah, well,
Valencia?
the small city northeast of Barcelona where a lot of the cyclists.
Girona.
Girona, yeah. I was there. So I woke up after 12-hour travel day and slept a little bit, but jet lagged, and I ended up going out into the hostel that we were staying at, and I was trying to I was avoiding the score because I knew that there was no way Toronto was going to win that game, Kevin. There's no way you're going to overturn a 4-goal differential. TFC was terrible. So I'm watching this screen go kind of old school dial-up internet. So you know how the picture used to sort of reveal itself pixel at pixel at pixel tinily. If you remember back in the day, this was not that long ago, but I guess it was a little bit behind in Spain. So I'm seeing the bottom of this, and it looks like a trophy. It looks like red people standing behind a thing that says champions, and I'm going, no. As it slowly revealed itself, and then finally,
just like the picture of Pamela Anderson in 1998 revealing itself very slowly, you have that trophy of TFC appearing on your screen.
So that's how I experienced the 6-1. I'm in the hospital screaming. The guys are looking at me like I'm insane, and all I did is just pointed at the computer, just said football, and they went, oh, and then just went back to what they were doing.
Oh yeah, you're that kind. Okay, yeah.
So at any rate, yeah, my favorite memories though of it, I'll give some from a Vancouver perspective. I think that one of their most precious memories might be the Martin Nash goal on Canada Day in 2008, and you should like that one as an Impact fan too, because essentially it helped the Impact win the Voyageurs Cup that year. Had Martin Nash not scored that goal at BMO Field on Canada Day, it is to this day the only time TFC has ever played a home game on Canada Day against the Whitecaps in the Voyageurs Cup. Had they won that game, they would have went on to capture the first edition of the Canadian Championship, not the first Voyageurs Cup, because of course it predates the competition. And Martin Nash scored that goal right in front of a packed South End. And it was an intense game there, too, because that was still during the early keg party days, too. So that was kind of a buzzkill, to say the least. So that one would be a good one for the Whitecaps fans to remember. You mentioned it's Teeter standing there, their manager at the time, just with that sullen look with the rain pouring down at Saputo Stadium. That 6-1 game got to the end. Everyone loves that one here in Toronto. We weren't even involved, TFC.
Yeah. No, exactly. But it's like, wow, that actually did happen. That's back in the day where the result of the season itself was counting, and the goal differential was the first tiebreaker for the winner of the Warriors Cup. Yeah.
Yeah. Couple quick ones.
Which was how Montreal eventually were the first winner of that tournament.
Yeah, they had to draw. Everyone forgets that Montreal didn't actually win that game. They drew that game against Montreal to capture the Warriors Cup, but draw was all they needed. Two more quick ones. These are TFC centric. Terry Dunfield's goal, obviously, just seconds after Darren Maddox had stood 20 feet from the corner from 112, 113, just rubbing in a tying goal to take a TFC win away in one of their, pretty much at their lowest moment of their existence. In fact, I'll say this, the lowest point in TFC history was when Darren Maddox scored that goal to tie the game 2-2 in stoppage time to once again blow a lead at home in front of BMO Field on a terrible season that was going to be a little bit of taste of joy, and he was stealing it away from us. And Maddox, the rival, he's standing directly in front of the most passionate supporters. He's rubbing it in. He's bringing it up, and then the corner started to turn ever so slightly just seconds later as Terry Dunfield, God bless his soul, rose up. Not the tallest man either. I'm stood beside Terry Dunfield.
I'm taller than Terry Dunfield, and I'm not tall.
And he got his head to it somehow, and he scored a goal, and we lost it. It was the most amazing moment of a crap storm of a season, and that is always going to be there as meaningless ultimately in terms of a scoreboard won the game, but it was meaningless in terms of standings and anything like that. But that's the essence of a rivalry game, is during the time the rivalry game happens, nothing else matters in terms of the season. You just want to win that game. So the 3-2 TFC victory there. And of course, everyone has to love the opener from 2 years ago when Josie Elfsdorf got the little salute from the Vancouver fan.
Yeah,
everyone enjoyed
Christy.
this.
Yeah, I didn't even remember her name.
The season that as I've joked before too, that season started with a female fan giving someone the finger and ended, if you remember the Columbus Crew, the girl that stands on TV just giving the finger to the camera there.
That's
so that
true.
was a banner moment for all that season, Kevin.
Exactly. No, but
shall we take a quick break, come back and wrap
Yeah.
this season up? Or do you have
yeah, we should, and talk about the games of the weekend. Yeah, exactly.
not season though, the games of the week?
Yeah, exactly. Because season's still a long ways away. You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS post-game show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
All right. 20 minutes to the taps open in Ontario and St. Patrick's Day, folks. So drink responsibly.
Pretty much me, not a very big drinker. I think today, because I'm off, and usually on St. Patrick's Day drinking is where the party at. So I might have a Guinness for lunch.
There you go. I generally I've enjoyed the beverage or two. Those that know me will laugh. But yes, I end St. Patrick's Day. They call it Amateur Day for a reason. I do sometimes just like to get on the subway at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night and just watch the spectacle unfold in front of me just to amuse myself.
I thought you were going to say noon. Because that's where it gets funny.
Yeah.
People stumbling all over. It's noon.
I remember in university I sort of remember in university waking up and lining up at 9:30 in the morning to get into Wilf's, the student pub at Wilf Laurier University. And they used to close it for an hour between 5 and 6 to reopen it again for the evening because it was a safety measure.
It's just to kick people out. So a new crowd comes in, like, go have a nap, take a shower, eat.
The floor probably too, if memory serves. Green beer and bad decisions.
Food coloring in beer, not good idea. Have a good beer. How about have a nice Guinness or a Kilkenny or something similar? Don't put colorant like green food coloring
Canadian
in your
something.
Coors Light, please. Don't. That's travesty. That's blasphemy right here.
Because if you put green dye into something, I was actually talking to a bartender. I know a lot of bar staff just because, well, I run in that world. But it sounds like I'm an alcoholic. I'm not really. At any rate, they
believe me, I'm telling you, I'm not. Trust me, I'm not.
Hello, my name is Duane. They talk about how the people will come into the bars and say, Patrick Stain, could I have the green beer, please? And they just laugh and think that's the most absurd thing ever because, of course, there's no green beer. They add dye to the beer that you order. So you need to order a beer, and then they put the green dye in. Why anyone would do that, I don't know. I guess it's just fun. I guess it's fun.
I guess.
Anyway, let's move on. No Friday night games this week, probably because MLS doesn't. Well, I think it's because the CCL is still going on, so they're avoiding the Friday night games early. Although I kind of miss them. I like the Friday night games.
Yeah, it's a standalone game that it has more eyeballs turned to it because it's the only MLS game on that night. So yeah, of course, it's our time where we can all meet up on social media to talk about the same game.
Yeah, precisely. The Twitter, you watch the game and you tweet about it, and everyone's sort of, it's when you don't have to explain what you're watching. When you're watching Saturday, you have to tell you people what game you're watching, whereas on Friday, it's only one to watch usually. The week does start actually with Montreal playing NYCFC down on the postage stamp. What's your thoughts on that one, Kevin?
Well, that's what's going to be difficult when you're looking at the field, the New York City FC Yankee Stadium, the small field. Just go back to last week, NYCFC and Diane United. Villa, in great performance by NYCFC, scored 4 goals. But it's the way they went to those goals. And the Montreal Impact's defense, their backline, has had difficulty with discipline over the last 2 weeks. We've seen red cards and yellow cards galore. Red cards won by Camara with yellow card accumulation in game number 1. Sima could have got sent off when he had that tackle foul in the box that was called for a penalty, so a foul but not a yellow card offense. But he had the early yellow in that game. This is a type of situation where it's such a small field that the physical aspect of a game defensively, when you cover, when you go man to man, you're literally battling for each inches to try to have space to do something with the ball, and Montreal will have to be very careful on their backline to keep that focus and that discipline so that it doesn't cost them as well. An early yellow for a defender, you say it's only a yellow, but what it does is it changes your mindset and you lose your instinct of, should I go for that tackle? Oh no, I'm not going to go because I'm on yellow. Those type of a situation in the heat of the moment takes that fraction of a eighth of a second away in your decision-making time, and that is the exact time you need to cross the entire length of the field here at Yankee Stadium. So those type of things are important for Montreal. Discipline and continue the accuracy of passing. If you lose possession in that type of field and the scenarios, the counter comes also quick. And when you have clinical finishers like Villa, it can be very costly. So Montreal needs to continue what they did last week compared to week number 1, Duane, and that is a very high efficiency in the passing accuracy department, especially in the defensive midfield position.
Early, but it will be a good measured game. We've already talked about TFC Vancouver, so we won't belabor that anymore. The game that really I'm most intrigued in, and unfortunately I'll have to watch the replay of it, is Atlanta-Chicago to see exactly sort of where both of those clubs are. We have high hopes for Chicago having a bit of a turnaround season. We're not too sure what Atlanta is based on that 6-1 win over whoever the hell in Minnesota is right now, whether it's an MLS team or not. We're not too sure yet. Plays in MLS though. Last week. So that one is a curiosity for me to see that one play out. Second Atlanta home game as well. Hopefully they get that chant under control and no one is being stupid or crossing the line, as they say within MLS. marketing that way. So let's not do that. But any other games jumping out at you, Kevin?
Well, you have Atlanta, Chicago. Atlanta, another sellout for Atlanta United. Chicago have had success in the first 2 weeks. Players like David Beckham really showing their true potential for the Chicago Fire. Can they replicate their early success on the road where they have the draw? Can they do this against Atlanta? It's going to be difficult. Atlanta has a lot of confidence heading out of their 6-1 destruction of Minnesota. Atlanta can score. We'll see how they measure against Chicago. DC United, Columbus, battle of teams that had tough beginnings so far. Columbus does fancy their chance at RFK, but DC United do have a philosophy and at least an identity of play that they're molding hasn't been successful so far, but we did see glimpses of them, of their ball possession ideology versus NYCFC. It was difficult throughout the game, but for 4 or 5 minutes at a time, we saw some potential. So maybe DC United at home can overcome Columbus. But Dallas, Duane, versus New England. Dallas were able to come back. You had to leave yesterday, but Dallas beat Pachuca 2-1 in the first game, coming back from a goal down with a lot of changes in their roster. I expect another 6, 7, 8 changes in this lineup, and I still expect Dallas to win, not easily, but to get a result at least against New England, which only played once this this year so far, last week being postponed. Same for Orlando. So did that unfortunate bye week actually hindered New England when they start their season like this? We'll see them against Dallas in a very difficult test already.
All right. And the other game, from a train wreck perspective, that I am most curious to watch, of course, is to see what Minnesota does to rebound from the 6-1 loss. I mean, Minnesota right now is must-watch TV in the wrong way. Like, you're going to watch that game to see what the hell they look like. And if they could look, there's either the narrative. Actually, in many ways, the worst case scenario in this game in terms of a narrative is if Colorado just does what they do to everyone and goes out and wins 1-0. And I wouldn't put that behind them. But if Colorado scores 3 goals against Minnesota, then that's the equivalent of them letting in 6 against Atlanta in my mind. So that would be another continuation of the bad defensive record. So we'll see how that one plays out. Minnesota does have some attacking pieces, as we've said a few times. This is going to be a very tough ask of them to go down and to get a result against a good Chicago or good Colorado team. So yeah, train wreck time there. But if the other side of that narrative is if Minnesota were to get anything out of that game, then that would be like a draw, a 0-0 draw for Minnesota would be like parade time. Like that
Just
would be.
Stop the onslaught of goals. That's what Minnesota's goal is heading into the Sporting Goods Stadium is let's stop the leakage. Let's put a bandage on it and let's try to keep it tight. That is probably their directive heading into Colorado. Another game that catches my attention, Duane, Sporting Kansas City versus San Jose. San Jose, 2 wins at home against 2 Canadian teams, Montreal, Vancouver. San Jose now their first game on the road against a very good Sporting Kansas City with some potential. San Jose have shown great things. Anibal Godoy 2 weeks in a row with great goals. Will they continue on that form? Was it home related? Can they play that way on the road? And can a team like San Jose, which we're not expecting anything at all from at the beginning of the season, if they can put 3 wins in a row, 9 points, now you're talking about the amount of points that's actually going to help them maybe not be in the bottom, maybe have a dip of form in the next few weeks. So a kind of big game already for San Jose where they can confirm the early success they had already.
Yeah, precisely. There's always a surprise team every year. If they get another result this year, you might start to think that the Earthquakes might be that surprise team this year. The week concludes. The Portland Houston's an interesting one as well. RSL LA, 2 struggling teams there. Week ends on Sunday. You have to wait all the way to 7 o'clock on Sunday to end your weekend with what is a marquee matchup in Seattle. Red Bulls. Red Bulls off to an uncharacteristic for them good start.
Usually they struggle through the beginning of the season. Just look at last year. After 2 games they had no goal yet. I remember Jesse March saying, "Yeah, we're concerned. 0-2, no goal scored." Things are different this year. And Bradley Wright Phillips, by the way, Duane, has received his green card. So For New York, that frees a international spot in the next few months.
Exactly. Interesting to end this on the Canadian folk. You think about the TFC perspective, and as much as it is so early in this season. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Vancouver gets the win this weekend. The Red Bulls beat Seattle out there to continue their good form. You'd have the Red Bulls on 9 points and TFC on 2, 7 back already, just 3 weeks into the season, as a team that expects to be competing and perhaps even win the Eastern Conference. 7 points is quite a bit, even this early. And MLS, every point matters. Every point does indeed matter. Every minute of this podcast matters. 10 minutes to the taps open. Kevin, let's say goodbye to the week.
You mentioned 3 points, and in the next few hours, I'm working on now my second edition of 3 Points for a Win, my weekly article about the Montreal Impact, and their 3 points to focus on. There are 3 points to get a win in Major League Soccer. For Duane Rollins, I am Kevin Laramee. You can listen to the show live all next week as well at Soccer Today SPN on Twitter for the show, at 24th Minute for Duane, at Kev Laramee for myself. Sunday night, 1 a.m., Week 3 MLS postgame show. Give us a voicemail if you have a great opinion. You're watching your team and they're won. You want to talk about it. You lost, you're crying, and you want to make sure your sorrows are heard. 1-802-731-0131. That's 1-802-731-0131. Until next time, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.